Right, so in this video we'll verify the scenario in which we grant granular control to privilege elevations of applications across Unix, Linux, and Windows using a DBA as an example. So first let's talk about provisioning. So the way we provision access is going to be kind of like a boring story because it's pretty much the same way we do with any Active Directory entitlement, where we use Active Directory groups. So the first thing we needed to do was to group our systems. We created a computer role called DB servers, and what we have in there is a couple of computers that are members of that group of computers. We have a CentOS 6 machine that is running Oracle, and we have a member 2 computer that is running SQL Server. What we've done is that the role that was created, that mixed DBA role, was assigned to my demo users, and the user that we will be using today is Fred Thomas. So Fred is a member of that group, and he has the proper memberships that allow him to be able to get a Unix identity, a role, as well as a role within Windows. Notice that role assignments can be also performed, it can be assigned as a temporary assignment, therefore that if you need to grant a role, you can do this in a change control window, or maybe you have a set of contractors coming in. Let's take a look at the role a little bit better. So the mixed role that we created basically has this properties. It will be available any day at any time. Notice I can have maybe a restriction. If this was a high security environment, I could just basically say, well, this is going to be available from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. In terms of system rights, from a Unix perspective, I'm making sure that both SSO and password are allowed. The user will have a free shell, and from a Windows perspective, the user will only be able to log into the Windows system, in this case via RDP. When I look at the audit capability, I'm saying that I'm going to audit if the Centrify agent for audit is available, and in this case we have it available. Let's further drill down into the role. So notice that I have the SSH rights. This should be already very common to use. So what I mean by that is that the role only allows the person to access the Unix systems via SSH. The user should not be able to log in through the console. The command that is tricky that I wanted to show you is SQL+. So from a SQL+ perspective, there's several things that we need to take a look at. One is what versions and platforms I'm running SQL+ or Oracle as. Because if you didn't standardize in the location of the binaries, then you would have to create multiple versions of this command. Notice that I'm also allowing the user to use any switches after SQL+. But what that allows me to do is that only the SQL+ binary that is located within this folder is going to be executed. Another thing that needs to be basically taken into consideration is environment variables. For Oracle to run, it does require some variables to be conserved. So notice that by default it will reset the environment variables, but in this case I'm saying keep the Oracle home, Oracle SID, and any other Oracle required variables available. Let's take a look at a little bit at Windows rights. So we have not covered Windows application rights, but this is really flexible. What that allows you to do, and I'm just going to quickly launch Notepad here, is that if you're building an application right for Windows, you can combine multiple application rights. That makes it much more efficient than what is available on Unix. And what that allows you to do is that you can have multiple applications, and these applications can be imported as a process. For example, remember Notepad that I launched? Really easy to import. I can set up arguments, the path, or I can do any filtering based on the file metadata. Another capability that I have is to import from a remote system. If the ports required for this are available, you will be able to pick it up from another system. I can also browse to the location. Let me go ahead and add another one. Browse to the location system32. This is I can look at the file at the executable right there, or I can basically do a blanket and say, well, I'm going to allow this person to run any PS1 file. This is PowerShell. Okay, so what that means is you have a lot of flexibility when it comes to combining multiple commands in a single Windows application, right? From an execution perspective, there's 3 ways you can go about this. You can have a user that can be an Active Directory user, be the service account that you can use for this particular execution. But the key here is that the end user does not need to know the credentials or the password for that account. That in itself overcomes or is a compensating control for the problem of sharing accounts. Another option is to run it as a built-in group in AD. This is in Windows. This is a great capability because it eliminates the need of having persistent members of, for example, the local administrators. This will only be in the context of the execution of the Windows application. Finally, you have the AD groups. You can also do the same with AD groups. Notice that in here it says authentication required. What that means is that we can prompt for the user's password, and even in the case that the system has other authentication capabilities, maybe smart cards, you can also add that as well. The version of Centrify 2015 is going to have smart card support natively. So with that, this is the way we created our role. We tied it to the database servers, and in the next video we're going to go ahead and test it, and we're going to do some session capture and replay.